Our next focus is on culture. Culture is the study of groups of people, analyzing what factors unify them and why they do what they do. Cultural diffusion is one term that's important for you to know. This is the spreading of culture or ideas from one culture to another. Some examples would be Genghis Khan spreading ideas and cultural advancements from one group within his empire to another. For example, ideas might be taken from the Middle East and transferred to people in China. The Europeans also spread their culture throughout the Americas by conquering the native tribes and sending missionaries throughout the land. Between their missionaries spreading the religious aspect of their culture and their conquistadors or their soldiers transferring the other beliefs and practices of the culture, the Spanish were quickly able to use cultural diffusion to their benefit. Food is another example, and you see this with foods of a great deal of culture spreading from one area to another. Popular examples in the United States would be Italian food or Mexican food or Chinese food. And so we've taken elements of their culture and they've been shared with ours. Cultural convergence is similar, and this is where you have multiple cultures coming together. Convergence means together. A good example of cultural convergence is the United States, which is very unique in all of the different cultures that have come together and have influenced each other. No other country on earth has had the same amount of cultural convergence, or the sharing and mixing and coming together of cultures. Cultural divergence is the separation of cultures. Oftentimes this is quite deliberate, where one culture says, I don't share these same values, I'm going to separate myself from you. One of the most notable examples for current events would be North Korea, which has largely separated and isolated itself from the world. China practiced cultural divergence starting in the 1400s when they decided to stop exploring the world and adopt an isolationist policy, which meant that they isolated themselves from the rest of the world. Israel also experiences a great deal of cultural divergence. So Israel is Jewish, all of the surrounding countries are Muslim, so there's a great deal of distinction between the different cultures and a lot of conflict that comes with that. There's many factors that influence culture. Physical factors influence population distribution. So, for example, people tend to live near water, fertile land, natural resources, etc. That's why there's not very many people who live in the desert. Where those aren't present, the population tends to be smaller, and people living together tend to adopt a similar culture. So where you've got large groups of people, you're going to adopt a similar culture for those people. So you'll have a different culture in areas where there's a great deal of resources, as opposed to those who live where there is not many resources. Social factors influence culture too. People tend to live near people who are like them. So religion, ethnicity, money, education levels, etc. can influence where people live. You see this on large scale where you see many people who live in countries where they're all of a similar race or they are all of a similar religion. But you also see this even in towns. You'll see people with more money tend to live with other people with more money, and people who are poor tend to live in areas where there are several people who are poor. So you see these different aspects are going to influence both the small scale and the large scale. Cultural identity is another term to be familiar with, and this is formed by factors a culture shares. This might include religion or language, where people live. So for example, part of your cultural identity is going to be the country that you live from. Most of you are going to also have other aspects like religion or maybe certain ethnicities. So you are all Americans. You Many of you are likely Christians, and perhaps you want to make it even more specific with the denomination of Christian that you are. You all speak English. These are all going to be ways that you identify yourself culturally. Cultural change occurs when people come into contact with other cultures. This is typically going to happen through one of three factors: through trade, migration, or war. With trade, you're able to get new products. This is going to expose you to new ideas. Migration will also expose people to new ideas as they move to areas where people do things differently, and likewise those people who come in from different areas can share their ideas too and the way things were done. War is also a way that impacts cultural change. There's a few ways this is done. First of all, when people come in and they force change, such as when the Europeans came in and took over Central and South America, they forced change. So the remaining Native Americans had no choice but to change. This can also come when people are just exposed to the new ideas, though. The Crusades would be a great example of this. As the Europeans are traveling to the Middle East and the Holy Land, they're learning about a lot of new foods, a lot of new products, and this is making it so that they want these things as well. They want to bring these things back, and they want to continue getting them. So that motivated different practices and different wants within the culture.